Okay, let's get started. We're going to be doing a post-deployment patch Firedrill. And what this will be is a Hotpatch that is going to be applied to staging. Henry here has graciously volunteered to be the person who applies the patch. And I wanted to start off with just a quick introduction of what Hotpatching is and a little Q&A. So first off, what is a Hotpatch? Hotpatch is a way for us to apply patch files to our production environment. This was done a while ago before we had Kubernetes clusters. It was done when we were only running an omnibus, and we created it because we needed a quick way to get changes to our production fleet. And at that time, it was even worse than it is now, where it just takes a very long time to build packages and deploy them, and rolling back is also difficult. So that's why this process exists. It's gone through a few iterations. This is the current iteration. This is probably the last iteration, because I expect this process to go away entirely once we fully transition to Kubernetes. But for now, it's still something that we use. And I created this Firedrill just so that everyone can be familiar with this process. We can put this recording up on YouTube for other people to watch, because we don't patch as much as we used to. And when we do need to do this, a lot of times, like, those brain cells have been deactivated, so we don't really remember how to do it. I want to start off with the Q&A. This is actually just supposed to be an interactive thing. So I'll ask the first question. When do we issue a Hotpatch? Does anyone have the answer to that?
I can say on weekends, because I was once in this situation that we found a bug, and on weekends it's hard to find enough people to make a release, right? And it's a lot of more work. So on weekends, I think it's more likely to do a hot patch to come over the weekend, and then on next Monday to have somebody really prepare a release with the fixes. That was the situation I was once in. And I guess also when we really need to hurry up, because releases take long to build.
Cool. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I guess I've seen it in the past when we had to roll back some code and we want to skip the queue.
Anyone else?
Security.
Uh-huh.
Security incidents where we can't wait for release.
Question to Brent's suggestion. Do we also do this for security reasons when we don't want to publicly reveal the code that fixes a CVE before we announce it? Or is that just not something we do?
As far as I know, we do have a separate security patch process with like a private clone of the most important repos.
Yeah, I can't think in recent memory us using the Hotpatch process, but it is private. So the patches aren't exposed anywhere. We definitely used to do this quite frequently. I don't think it just happens as much recently, because it used to be, well, right now it used to be that we didn't deploy our security fixes get deployed to GitLab.com before the security release goes out. It used to be a coordination disaster where we would have to sometimes hot patch and then do the security release. So now it's much better. So this doesn't come up as much. Anyone else? Okay. I just wanted to add, the most important part of this is that we should only be doing this if GitLab is down, or if there's an S1 security vulnerability, or if there's an S1 incident, then GitLab should be either down or severely crippled. We only want to do this process in extraordinary situations, not like for just getting a fix out to GitLab quickly. Second question, does anyone know off the top of their head what components were able to hot patch?
I know the Rails code base for sure.
Yeah, and that's the answer. We can't patch anything except the Rails code base. That's just the way that the patcher works. So this is limited to components that run Rails. Other things like GitLab shell, workhorse pages, CAS, registry, those can't be patched. So it's something to keep in mind.
Is part of the reason because we apply the patch as a last step and we would have to run the patch on the compiled binary?
Yeah, exactly. We're doing nothing more than slamming patch files on our servers and hupping Puma. That's it. And that's how it was designed a long time ago. We've carried forward that design and we're hopefully going to be deprecating this thing. So I don't think that's going to change. How do we initiate a hot patch? Anyone know?
I know, but I'm going to let someone else answer.
Okay, anyone? I think Henry knows, but he's doing the demo. If no one else knows,
Or maybe let me answer that, because before the demo, I shortly looked over the runbook just to get informed of all of that. And so my first answer would be to look for documentation, because normally I would have been in a situation that I wouldn't know exactly, just have some clues. There's some automation somewhere. So finding documentation, and then I found that we need to run a chatbot command and then prepare a patch and put it in the right directory.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'm glad that it was in the runbooks, because I know that there are multiple places where we document this process, and there are probably links like to the other
I have
place.
some comments to that. Yeah.
Yeah. But the whole thing is initiated with ChatOps. This was implemented recently, like in the last year. There should already be an incident open. If there isn't an incident open, then you just put a placeholder number for the incident number. So we'll show this later when we do the demo. And where is the hot patch documentation? I'm just going to reveal this since we kind of already answered it. This is in the release docs project, which is not where our other runbooks are, but if you go to our runbooks, you'll see a pointer to this. This explains the process for, well, this project is used for all of our release documentation. That's why post-deployment patches lives there. This documentation will go through the process both for the SRE and the developer creating the patch. In this case, Henry is going to be doing both, playing the part of both the developer and the SRE, and walking through the process of creating a hot patch for staging. So I think we're ready to move on. Henry, are you ready?
I don't feel really prepared, but that's exactly the right thing, I guess.
Yes. So who is prepared for a hot patch?
I was chosen for not being prepared. So then we will just get started, I guess, right? And I should share my screen.
Sure.
Yes, please.
So how should we get this started? So maybe let's suppose we just created an incident, right?
I already created an incident, actually.
Yeah, I saw this one. And so I would probably jump into the incident channel, check. Test incident, nice. And okay, not many details, but we think something is wrong, right?
Right.
And I think we are in the situation, let's say I'm the SRE on a weekend, because during business days, I probably would just reach out to people and find somebody who could do all of this for me as an SRE, like release managers, but on a weekend, that's much harder. So in this case, how's this going? Because right now I would need to figure out what's going wrong and need to figure out what I need to fix, right? And that's the next big question I would have in this scenario, because you didn't give this here, right?
Yeah, and I guess for the purpose of this, let's just assume it's an S1. I didn't label it as an S1 for obvious reasons, but it's an S1 issue, and we need to fix some code in Rails.
Okay, and we suppose you already know what code to fix.
Yeah,
and found this, because this is another thing which I've found that needs training and documentation. How do we find MRs that changed in the latest release, right? And to find what changed and could maybe have caused an incident.
Yeah,
because
that's a good point.
Also something which I always need to look up again because I forget about it. I'm not doing that often enough. But that's in most cases necessary if we do this kind of hot patching, right? We need to identify an MR, and in most cases just revert it, in my experience. So that would be an important part to document and train. But we will not do that here, I guess. Yeah, so the next thing would be that I know what code to change, but I need to figure out how to get this into production. And for that, I would go to look for the runbook. And as you mentioned, there's this runbook link, but right before this meeting, I tried to find it. And the first thing I did was naively using Google search, GitLab and Hotpatch, because I know there's a Hotpatcher, and that was pointing me to a non-existing runbook page of an old version in our SRE runbooks directory. But from that, I could figure out there is actually one runbook entry in our SRE handbook directory, and that is pointing to the link you gave here in this documentation. So that was more or less working to find the documentation for that one. And from that, I started reading. So in this case, and that's also a problem, I think, you do hot patches when you're under time pressure. So right now I'm under time pressure. There's an urgent problem. I don't have many people to help me, and I need to figure out how to get this in as fast as possible. But now I need to read all of this. But I think it's still fair, but it's giving me the background information that I need for that mostly. But it's still a lot to read. So I would now spend at least 10 minutes to read and understand this if I wouldn't have done this before under pressure. Okay. Reading through all of this, I would have figured out, okay, I need to patch some place in code. And we already have an incident, and there's a chatops command to run to create a directory in the patcher project where I could put in my code later. So I will just execute that one already in preparation. I would do this in the chatops testing right now. Incident number was, I forgot about it, 3430.
I think you need to
Yeah, it's pre-formatted.
uncode.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, I see. Yeah. I see.
Maybe
it's clever.
shift paste.
Yeah, I love Slack for that.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that was wrong.
Uh-oh, that's actually gonna do something.
That'll work because you have a placeholder.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe.
Let's see what happens. It might.
I really hope this just throws a type error and doesn't do something horribly undefined.
But for incident, not defined.
Yeah,
Nice.
so let's ignore this one. That's fine. We can just close that MR. And the next one that's the one we want. MR 58.
Okay, cool.
You didn't throw a type error?
No, it just created an MR.
Okay. Depending on what's in the error, we might want to open an issue for this.
Yeah, that's a bug for sure. Like it I think it's pretty accepting of anything because, but it doesn't, I think it wants it to be a number. So that's why there's no number. So just like empty string.
Okay. Now reading through this, I think I need to prepare a patch. For that, I would need to go in the GitLab EE project and do some code change. And then, let me read that again. I think this link is wrong. It will not work. I found several of those links are wrong here. Everything.
What's wrong about it?
Missing the GitLab com.
It's missing the GitLab com part inside of it and in several places here. We should fix this later.
Okay.
I'm not sure why I need the output of the Slack command here. Okay, for the patch directory, I see. But normally I would just, I guess, clone the project and get inside of it, right? Git status. Would do a git fetch maybe. And would see the new branches I just created. And check out this one. Okay. I guess one of the last ones here would be the directory for the release that we need to patch.
So we want to patch staging.
We want to patch staging?
Yeah, for the demo.
I see. Is there something about staging here? I mean, what I thought how the process is working, that the patcher would go through the different stages, right, in the pipeline. And I would need to figure out what version we are running right now. I think that was given in the run book. If I remember correctly, we can do the chatops command for auto deploy status. Ah, yeah, it's mentioned even. So this one. So that should work.
So just one comment here. You can see that the chatops gives you the directories in the response, the chatops command for creating the Hotpatch, but you don't see staging there. And the reason for that is that staging is running the same. I assume staging is running the same version as production Canary, but let's validate that with the auto deploy status.
Yes, so we have Canary and staging. This is running version 60D something.
Yeah.
FD7, FD7. So we have Canary and staging being the same version.
Right. So so what we'll need to do is use the Canary version, but this doesn't mean we're actually going to patch Canary.
What do you mean by your last sentence?
We'll need to use the version that if you scroll up to the chatops response, we'll use the Canary patch directory. It gives you a link there.
I see. There's a different one. I see.
That's not very clear.
It's showing the version number, so to make it easier for yourself.
Yeah, but it evidently not very successful at that. So we would use the if we want to patch staging, we have to use the Canary version because it's the same as staging.
Okay, so the patch is tied to the base version. It's not tied to an environment. And if the same version were deployed, any production deploy for that same version would also apply that patch.
Exactly. So for example, if you prep a patch for, if we were to keep this patch for Canary, it eventually would get applied to production, because eventually production is going to be running the same version as Canary, which is why we'll probably just roll back this patch when we're done.
One question on that. Is that patch only applied during a deploy, or is it also applied by Chef?
Patches are not applied by Chef at all. They're only applied during deploy. They're applied both by the post-deployment patcher, which is this process, and also by the regular deploy. When you do a deploy on production, we'll first see if there are any outstanding patches for the version we are upgrading, and if there are, then it will apply those after the upgrade. This is to make sure that patches don't get rolled back by a deployment. As long as you have a patch directory for the version you're upgrading to, it'll get applied.
I have to say that I wouldn't have looked at the helpful links here in the ChatOps response, because I anyway need to check out the code locally in my console, right? And I anyway need to look up the auto deploy status to see in which environment we have which version. And I would have taken the numbers from there later for looking to the right directories, I guess. That's also more logical if you follow the runbook. So I think I would have just ignored this here and just looked at the numbers, and then decided, okay, if we go to staging first, we need to get into this directory for sure. And then that would work here. And for .com, I would have thought either we don't have the problem there because we are in a earlier version here, or if we also need to patch there, then I would have put the same patch into this other directory too, right? That would have been my assumption. Am I right?
Yeah. So if you wanted to, so when we do hot patches, it's very unusual that we would patch any other environment except production. That's, in fact, I don't think I've ever seen a patch that we've applied to another environment. Sometimes what we'll do, if production and staging are running different versions, then we will we'll create a patch for staging and production separately. We'll put those patches in the two directories, and then to test it out, we'll apply it to staging first and then prod.
Yeah, makes sense. Maybe a note in the runbook about environments just meaning choosing the right version directories in the patcher, because as I thought first I need to look into something which is called gprod staging and canary or something in the patcher project, but of course it's just about versions. So yeah, but I think I would have gotten it from the runbook what is meant. Okay, so we have this created for the Hotpatcher, the directories. To go on with that, I would read how to create the patch actually, and that would mean I need to do some changes to GitLab AE and create the patch out of that. And it's proposing that I check out the recent release number. So I would need to check the number I found in the ChatOps command. Let's try. So right now I'm in the GitLab AE repository. And let's see, what was the number?
What is the GitLab EE repository? I think I've only interacted with the GitLab repository.
Yeah, that's the legacy name for the, it used to be we had two projects, one for GitLab CE and one for GitLab EE. That was when we had the split and we would do merges between the two. Eventually we collapsed. GitLab EE became GitLab, and then we have the GitLab FOSS, which is the GitLab project with all the non-free code removed.
It was a much worse system than we have now.
So Henry, this is just your old checkout of the old repo, I'm guessing.
Maybe. So I need to go into the GitLab directory, you think? Sorry, I'm confused with the versions of.
I mean, it depends what the remote is on that EE directory.
Yeah.
Like if you updated it ages ago and just forgot about it.
Oh, it's still that fun.
Maybe it might redirect. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
We'll find out.
So this is fairly new, so it seems to redirect. So that would work. Am I right?
I think so.
Yeah. And I think also I just found this somewhere linked here, maybe. Not sure if I found some reference of EE. Yeah, from this link here, I got it, I think.
Fair
so
enough.
It's actually getting to EE.
And if you click that link, is it going to redirect? Probably,
Yeah,
right?
for sure, because else I would have also seen something else right now. And it's, yeah, GitLab.
Yep.
GitLab. Nice. But we didn't break anything. So, and I think Jav just suggested that I change, do a trivial change right now, which would be something like, I don't know, adding a comment in this file.
You may want to put it after the frozen string literal.
Okay.
Although it probably doesn't, it doesn't matter, but.
Okay.
Cool.
And let's create a patch out of that. There was a command for convenience already. Okay, I need to exchange the version number again. That one too. This one. Nothing. I didn't commit, right? No, I would have expected to get a patch right now from that command.
I don't think so. And the reason for that is you haven't committed your, oh no, you did.
Ah, right.
No, this is your git diff. Yeah, you haven't committed your changes yet. So
I need to commit. I see,
you can just do a git diff as well, and that's fine. But if you want to use that command, you're going to need to commit your changes locally and then run it.
Yeah, but I think we can also take this one, right? That would be
yeah, that's fine too. The exclusions here, are just for if like you're picking if you're picking an MR or a commit and it had spec tests updates, you don't want to include those in the patch because it won't get applied, I think, because we don't include spec tests you know, in our deployment package. In your case, it doesn't matter because you don't have any spec tests.
So let's see where we are. I wanted to check, use version FD7 something. So that would be this directory here. So I would just copy the patch into that file directory. No, why not?
Was there an additional subdirectory in between?
Let me.
Like patches /
Right, yes. So there's nothing inside, so I can just copy it into a file called patch there. That's now my, I don't know, fix. And maybe a better name. Let me see, do we have something in the documentation for naming patches? Here. So numbered if there are several of them to determine the order of the patches. Patch, okay, that should work. And give it the issue number. So what should we say? Patch for blah. Okay. Patch for, and the issue number was 3430. And the diff was that one. Okay. That was easy.
You're not being serious. Or I think it could be a lot easier.
I think in the real situation, not having read this document half an hour ago, I would be very stressed right now and first read it 2 times and feel like I don't have time to read it really. So that would stress me a lot. That's a personal thing for me, I guess. But after you have read it, it's not too hard to do. I mean, the steps are not very difficult once you figured out which are the right repositories, and checking out code and stuff isn't that hard, and running the ChatOps commands. So I think it would stress me a lot, and maybe I would be a good, would take more time right now for that in a real incident, but it would work. So I think that's okay. Really, for a runbook, I think that's a different discussion. I'd like to have something without a lot of explanations, just steps that work, right? Because reading a lot of things during an incident when you need it, it's stressful and taking a lot of time. So this is a good manual, but for a runbook, it's still a little bit too much information, I think. Okay. I should create an MR out of that. I get from that. So I need to commit. We are inside of that one. Okay. And git push. What's the name of the branch? Okay, this one. Let's see. Nice, Hotpatch. I initiated it. Only for S1 security, blah, okay. To do. Disable auto deployments by setting canary manual promote. Okay, now it's getting more tricky. I didn't see this in the runbook.
Yeah. This is, we can skip this because I've decided not to, we're not going to actually apply this patch to staging. We're just going to go up until the dry run because we're in the middle of trying to get the security release finished.
Yeah, but in reality, I would just need to set this CI variable right now. And actually this project here, right? Yeah, it's the one I'm playing the code, not the one which is running the pipelines, right? Okay. Developer begin to auto deploy. Okay.
One question there? Do all SREs actually have permissions to set that variable on that project?
Good question. How about we try, Henry, just to see. This is the deployer project.
I see in the deploy. I see. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like
should work. Yeah. Okay, assuming I did that. This can wait on a weekend because there's no developer here right now because we still don't have development escalation on weekends. I think it will start on February. Sending the Slack message for release managers. Fair enough. I will skip this right now to not confuse anybody. Approval, I would approve by myself if it's an emergency, or maybe somebody is in the incident.
So usually a developer is prepping the patch. Hopefully, actually, the developer drives this process, but you might need to drive it. The developer submits the patch, and it's best to have another developer review it if possible, because it's a code change, and it's a code change that's going to go directly to production. So normally there would be another review.
Yeah.
What's up with those git keep additional?
Yeah, so
this is a not change.
These are the other environments that we're not changing. So this was kind of a hacky change we made recently that just made it a little bit easier by prepping these directories for you instead of having to create them yourselves. So ChatOps created these directories. These are just the placeholders.
Got it. So it creates them for all currently deployed versions? Okay.
Yeah, and it's nice to clean. I probably, if I was reviewing an MR for this, I'd ask to clean these up. It doesn't hurt anything by keeping them, but if they're empty, we can remove them.
Cool. That makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, I approve.
So before merge, I prefer not to merge this, but instead look at the dry run pipeline to kind of see what it looks like. In fact, can you just mark this as draft? So
do we have a checkbox for marking as draft, or should I just put it in the
just do mark as draft at the upper right corner, right next to your cursor.
There's a button.
There's a button for it.
Top right.
Next to the edit.
I see it.
Yeah.
Never used this. I always just write this in the title. Okay. Nice.
That's all it does is edit the title. Cool. Okay, so let's look at the dry run pipeline. So maybe this could be improved. There are two projects, the engineering project and the patcher project. Patcher project is where the pipelines actually run. If you go to the comments on the MR, if you scroll down a bit, you can see that there are links to the actual pipeline that runs on ops.
Ah, nice. Yeah, I would have followed the runbook, which is saying to watch the pipelines in the other project. So that would also have lead me there.
But that's a good point that I don't think the runbook even mentions this project split.
I think it
does. It?
Yeah,
it does. Okay, good.
So I would have just checked the pipelines in the other project following the runbook now. But if we can go from here, this is the. What's the difference between the two? My last
I think you had
draft change, right?
Yeah, multiple commits, I think.
Yeah, right. The first one from the ChatOps command and then my.
Okay. So this is the dry run. We can just take a look at this and it's doing a dry run against staging. It'll do this even if you only prepped the patch for production, in which case it's a no-op. Since we're actually doing a patch for what's running on staging, we should see interesting output here.
In which stage should I look? Start or deploy?
Let's look at the API to start.
Okay.
And just scroll up. So the yellow text is the stuff that's changing. It's showing you that it would have applied the patch, and what it does for the dry run is it applies it in force check mode to see if it actually would successfully apply. There are some conditions for the deployer, and this is for Ansible, to apply the patch. If you see where it says the following host will have the patch applied, these have to all be true. So the patch directory has to exist, that equals true. Rails has to exist. In other words, the box we're deploying to has to be running Rails. And the patch has to be a change. So when it runs it in dry run, it will see if it actually changes the file. This allows us to be idempotent so that if you apply it twice and the patch has already been applied, it doesn't get applied again. So when you're troubleshooting, if, for example, you create a patch and it doesn't seem to be getting applied, you can look at this debug output and you can see the reason for it. It could be any one of those reasons why it doesn't get applied, but more often it's the patch directory doesn't exist than the patch directory for the version that's running on the box.
Wasn't it even mentioned in somewhere
Yeah.
in here?
No, it doesn't mention this stuff. And would it be helpful? Like, I'm afraid like there's almost too much information in our docs, but maybe this is stuff you need for troubleshooting.
Yeah, I thought I read that somewhere before, but not sure.
Maybe like a troubleshooting document for common problems.
Yeah. I mean, this is a nice manual here, the runbook itself, so we can add more information to it, but then we should maybe have a very short TLDR just with the steps to follow.
Yeah.
As a runbook in these situations. But I think I would have followed this so far without problems.
Great.
So I would see the pipelines run, and I think later, let's go through this, because this is the part which we just executed here. So as IS and SRE would run this now, view the pipelines of the patch repository. When the patch is deployed to Canary and verified, advance the patch to production by manually initiating gprod prepare job. Okay, but we anyway only wanted to go to Canary right now to fix it, so that's not to be done now.
Yeah, and we're not going to merge this patch anyway. So, but what we could see is, well, actually, before we do that, maybe go back to the pipeline, because I also want to show the Kubernetes job, because that's a little bit different. So if you scroll up to the top, what it does is it takes a look at what image is running in the environment, pulls the image, creates a new Docker file, applies the patch file, uploads the image to dev, and then triggers Acade's workloads pipeline dry run. And when you merge this to master, it'll actually do a Kubernetes deployment. This is a bit hacky, but it was the only way we could think of to unify this patch file process, where you create a patch file and then you want to create an image from the patch file. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Nice. And that's not taking long, right?
No, it doesn't take long at all. Yeah.
Okay. And going back to the pipeline just to check how it looks like. you're running QA tests. Yeah, and then I would need to, in the real pipeline, I think it would go further, right?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example of a real pipeline in the agenda. I added a link to the agenda. Yeah, just go to the link that I put in the agenda, because you have to go back a ways. If you go to the document, it's right under you. There it is.
Yeah.
So you get like a very big pipeline that has a bunch of jobs, manual jobs for, well, I think some of these are automatic, but we apply to both staging and production in the same stage. And I think the way this works is that the productions are manual and the stagings are automatic. So when you promote to the deploy stage, all the staging jobs will run, and then you can also, and then in that stage, you can hit the manual jobs for production. If you want to, you can wait for QA to complete, but it's optional. And the reason for this is there have been some situations where we desperately need to get a patch on production and we can't afford to wait the 20 minutes for QA to complete on staging. So we leave it up to the SRE and the developer to decide on, whether they want to run QA and whether the patch needs to be applied to staging at all. Like maybe it just gets applied to Canary and production.
That's interesting, but I have to admit, if I would be in this situation on the weekend as an SRE, I wouldn't know that for sure, and I wouldn't know what I can safely manually start here, right? So that feels dangerous.
Yeah, I think it is very dangerous. This whole process is very dangerous, I would say. And that's why we hopefully will get rid of it soon. To make it safer, I'm not sure. What would be your suggestion for making this?
I think I wouldn't just
safer?
touch this. I would just wait for the process to finish in its usual way. If I don't have an expert staying with me, I would just follow the runbook and let the pipelines finish as they are running. And if it takes an hour, then it takes an hour.
So if you were following the runbook as it is right now, you would hit the gprod prepare stage, which would then promote to the deploy stage, and then the staging jobs would run automatically, and then you would have to manually run the production jobs. But I don't think that's yeah. This is not very clear in the docs, because I think this changed recently, so we should update that.
Okay. Yeah. So I assume I was successful. So everything applied and was deployed, and things being hubbed, and we fixed the issue for now. Let's see what the runbook is saying here to do after that. Here also is listed what is determining what if a patch is being applied, right? What you just mentioned before. It's saying that it's checking if it's a real patch and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And the later part of the runbook is about patching front ends, which is much more complicated and we don't cover here, right?
We did this once, my memory. I think we did it only once. So we have that instruction, but this is a very rare occurrence.
Okay.
Front ends as in load balancers?
No, front end as in JavaScript.
Because we need to deploy the assets to the CDN and stuff like that.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we don't need to do that very often, right? So hopefully not on the weekend.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. I think after that, I would then just, I don't know, do some cleanup, I guess, writing issues and pinging people and trying to make sure that on Monday that would be picked up as soon as possible by release engineers and developers to get out a real fix and release, and monitoring if everything is right, and then I would be done for the weekend, right?
Yep.
Nice.
Great. Igor, you had one question about safety. Do you want to ask it?
Sure, I can read it out. So yeah, just kind of the risk of this process, because we're bypassing a lot of our existing pipelines, right? We're bypassing our regular unit tests. We're bypassing all of CI. So I was kind of curious about what safeguards we have in place and whether that has been an issue in the past. And I see you've already added some answers there, Jav.
Yeah, I mean, normally these changes are very targeted, so we haven't had any problems where, you know, things like the application couldn't even run after applying a patch. We do have the health check. It's not great, but it's something. Same for Kubernetes, where we have the same readiness check, so pods won't come, won't come up if the readiness fails, and then it would just roll back. Yeah, our best bet really is the staging QA. That's the best way we can validate things, and that just takes a long time. So often we sacrifice that because of urgency.
I suppose the other aspect is this would hopefully mostly only be used when something is catastrophically broken already. So it is risky, but it's kind of our last ditch. Like in an ideal world, we'd have like we'd revert and deploy again. It would be a better one to go through the full pipelines, or something that gives us a bit more safety. So this one is there's a lot of risk around it. So hopefully only needed to be used when things are like S1 level broken.
For some context, the last patch we did on master was a month ago, and the last one before that was 3 months ago.
Okay, so we've decreased the frequency of these quite a bit, because I know about half a year ago we were doing several of these every month.
Yes, yeah, that is, and this is great. It's also a problem because the tooling tends to break.
Right, it means we're not testing the process as much.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why we decided to start this Firedrill. So what we'll do is I'm going to open up some issues to, fix some of the things we discussed, and we'll probably do another one, but not for probably at least a month. I think we're not going to do these like every week or anything like that. Cool. I think we're out of time. Does anyone else have questions before we wrap up? If not, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for running it. And thanks, Henry, for humoring us.
Thanks. Special thanks to Henry for volunteering.
It was a lot of fun.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.